Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It happened at the dinner table, the one spot in our home that was supposed to be safe, comforting, familiar. Madeline sat across from me, swirling a glass of red like she was auditioning for a wine commercial, her smile sharp enough to cut marble. "You know," she said casually, setting her fork down with a faint clink. "Daniel, he was just better in bed. More confident, more generous." The room went still. I could hear the hum of the fridge behind me, the soft hiss of the pan cooling on the stove. And yet all I felt was that single sentence, slamming into my chest like a brick. I didn't flinch, didn't let her see me blink. I picked up my napkin, dabbed the corner of my mouth, and looked her dead in the eyes. "I knew girls better than you, too," I said evenly, like I was commenting on the weather. Her smirk flickered, just for a second. But I saw it, the first crack in her perfect little performance. "Excuse me," she laughed coldly. "That's all you've got? You sound bitter." Which is a little pathetic, considering you've barely touched me in months. I leaned back, folding my arms. "Yeah, because sleeping next to an ice sculpture every night really gets the blood going." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You're not some poor victim here. You've been emotionally checked out since last summer. And don't think I didn't notice how you perked up whenever that barista at Rocco's smiled at you." "Funny," I muttered, "how you keep receipts when it's convenient, but somehow forgot what commitment means." Her voice sharpened. "Commitment? Don't act like you're some faithful martyr. You've been miserable since you got that raise. Thought it made you king of the house." "No," I said, standing slowly. "I thought it meant we could finally breathe, that we'd earned a little peace. But clearly, you were looking for fireworks." She pushed her chair back hard, nearly toppling her wine. "You know what your problem is, Eric? You think playing the calm one makes you the good guy." "No," I said, voice low. "But it's better than playing the heartless one." Silence fell between us like an anvil. She stood there a moment, lips parted like she was reaching for another dagger, but none came. Instead, she turned, grabbed her clutch, and walked out the front door without another word. The door slammed. I stood alone in the dining room, still half holding my fork. The roast was cooling. Her wine glass still spun slowly in place, like the room itself hadn't caught up with what had just happened. That was Madeline for you. Always playing with fire, just to see if I'd burn. And tonight, I didn't flinch. Our house sat quietly in the glow of dusk, 2 stories in a quiet street in Springbrook, Illinois. I was 39, a financial analyst for a mid-sized firm, quiet mornings, spreadsheets, podcasts during my commute. Madeline was 36, a marketing exec with sharper teeth than anyone I'd met in corporate life. We'd been married 11 years. And yet, in that moment, I knew that line she crossed. It wasn't just about Daniel. It wasn't even about the bedroom. It was about power. And what she didn't know, not yet, was that I'd finally decided to stop playing defense. The next morning, I walked into the downtown law office like a man arriving early for his own rescue. It had rained overnight, just enough to slick the sidewalks and paint everything in a soft gray hue. My breath fogged slightly in the chilled January air as I pulled open the glass door of Brantley and Morse Legal. I hadn't been here in years, not since I signed some contracts for a startup that never made it past beta. But Patrick Brantley had built something real. "Look what the cat dragged in." A familiar voice called from behind a mahogany-paneled glass wall. Patrick stepped out from his office, wearing the same crooked grin he'd had since undergrad, just now attached to a much more expensive haircut. I held up a hand. "Before you say anything, I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For ignoring your advice 11 years ago." He laughed, clapping me on the back as he ushered me inside. "Please. Watching people ignore my advice is how I bought this coffee machine." Inside, his office was sleek, minimalist, but sharp. Leather chairs, glass desk, framed photos of courtrooms and river trails from our hiking days. He gestured for me to sit, then pulled 2 mugs from the counter behind his desk and poured fresh coffee. I sat down, exhaled slowly, and finally said it. "Turns out that prenup you insisted I didn't need back then saved my life." He didn't even blink, just handed me the mug and leaned back in his chair. "I've seen hundreds like her." I smirked. "Madeline?" "No," he replied, pointing his mug at me. "You, the good guy, the stable guy, the spreadsheet and Sunday routine guy who marries a firework and calls it love." I couldn't help but chuckle, because it stung with accuracy. "She wasn't always like this," I muttered, more to myself. Sure she was, Patrick said simply. You just thought you could outlast it. I nodded slowly, staring into the swirl of steam above my cup. She told me last night. Daniel, her ex, was better in bed. Patrick raised his eyebrows, but didn't interrupt. She said it like she was commenting on the weather, then smirked like she'd scored some kind of point. I paused. I told her, I knew girls better than you two. And she left. He let out a low whistle. Cold man, but deserved. I didn't even raise my voice. I just looked at her and realized this isn't the woman I built my life with. This is someone playing chess with my dignity. Then it's time to flip the board, Patrick said, tapping the desk with his finger. And lucky for you, we still have the rules. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a thick folder, my prenup. He kept the signed scan on file, of course. Patrick was thorough like that. You're covered, he said, flipping it open. Everything you had before marriage is yours. Anything you've earned individually stays yours, too. Joint assets are fair game. But if she's the one who broke the marriage, and we can prove it, she doesn't even get those. She broke it, I said quietly. She just doesn't realize it yet. Patrick glanced at me, expression calm but sharp. So, you want this quiet? Or do we play it loud? I didn't hesitate. Quiet. For now. But decisive. He nodded, already tapping something on his laptop. I'll set up a trust. Start separating funds. Do it clean, legal. She won't even know until she tries to spend something. And when she does? Patrick grinned. That's when we pull out the clause on infidelity. If she's cheated, she loses everything. I nodded slowly, my fingers tightening around the mug. Then we confirm it. And if she has, I want her to feel it. Not with anger, with silence. With precision. Patrick leaned back, satisfied. Welcome to the game, my friend. Now let's make her regret underestimating the quiet guy. That afternoon, I pulled into the driveway like I always did. Slow, silent, invisible. From the outside, everything still looked the same. Our red brick colonial sat there calmly beneath the gray sky, the porch light still on from Madeline's forgetfulness the night before. A recycling bin tipped over from the wind, my coat hanging neatly on the hook just inside the door, the faint smell of her vanilla candles still clinging to the air. But inside me, everything had changed. I hung up my coat, loosened my tie, and walked into my home office with the same calm energy I always had. Nothing about me looked like a man on the warpath. But that was the point. I sat down at the desk, opened the laptop, and logged into our joint account. The screen flickered. The numbers appeared. Our shared life, reduced to digits and decimals. Madeline never cared much about managing money. She was brilliant in a room full of clients, dazzling with a marketing pitch, but the bank was just a place her card never got declined. I handled the bills, the accounts, the taxes. I'd always done it quietly, patiently. Today, that patience served a new purpose. I opened a second tab, the private trust Patrick had set up hours ago. Already live, already legal, already bearing my name only. Click. Transfer from joint checking, $18,400. Click. From emergency savings, $32,000. Click. From brokerage, $47,800. Each keystroke landed like a silent gavel. Click, click, click. I moved with the efficiency of a man who wasn't emotional anymore. No fire, no fury, just cold, clear resolve. I didn't leave the accounts empty. That would be too obvious. But I left them lean enough to be noticed when she tried to buy something frivolous. As the transfers processed, I took a slow sip from the glass of water I'd set beside me. Madeline would feel this, not as an attack, but as a withdrawal of control. I heard her voice in my head again from the night before. Daniel was better in bed. I'd replayed it 100 times, not because it hurt, but because of the look on her face when she said it. The performance, the smirk, the wine glass lift, like punctuation at the end of a sentence meant to slice. But what she didn't realize was this. I don't scream when I'm hurt. I reorganize. The files on my desk were suddenly more than documents. They were armor. Every account I moved, every line I highlighted, every password I changed. It was another inch of steel between me and the woman who thought I'd never act. Outside, I heard wind pushing against the windows. The house creaked faintly in response, like it sensed what was shifting inside its walls. I finished the last transfer and shut the laptop quietly. Then, without a word, I got up, walked to the kitchen, and made myself a sandwich. Turkey and cheddar. just like any other afternoon. Because that's how you start a war when you're someone like me. Not with screaming, with silence, with systems, with just enough calm to make them think nothing's wrong, until everything is. She came in like thunder. The door slammed so hard a picture frame in the hallway tilted. I didn't move. I was at the kitchen island, slicing an apple with the same calm precision I'd used earlier that day when transferring thousands out of our joint accounts. Madeline stormed in, heels clicking across the floor like warning shots. Her coat was still on, her purse still over her shoulder, and her expression, full storm. She slammed her bag on the counter and slapped her card down in front of me. "You want to tell me why this was declined at Nordstrom?" she snapped. I glanced at the card, then at her. Not surprised, not rattled, just still. "Try it again tomorrow," I said quietly. "Might work then." She narrowed her eyes. "What does that mean?" I finished slicing the apple, placed a wedge in my mouth, chewed slowly. Then I wiped my hands, reached to the side drawer, and pulled out a familiar folder. Pale blue, clean, thick. The prenup. I slid it across the counter toward her. Her brows creased. "What is this?" "Are you seriously?" "Page 9. I said flatly, tapping once. "Paragraph 3. Go ahead." She stared at me for a moment, like she wasn't sure whether to laugh or throw something. Then, without sitting, she flipped open the folder and scanned until her eyes landed on the line. I watched the exact moment she found it, the shift in her breathing, the way her shoulders went rigid. "Assets individually earned or acquired prior to marriage remain the sole property of the original owner," she read aloud, "including but not limited to income, savings, investments, real estate, business profits." I finished the sentence for her. "And any inheritance received before or during the marriage." Her voice was thinner now. "You're using this against me?" "No," I said, folding my arms. "I'm using it to protect myself." She closed the folder slowly. "You're punishing me." "Because I said something stupid." I met her eyes, steady and unblinking. "You didn't just say something. You meant it. You rehearsed it. You wanted to hurt me, and you wanted to see how deep the blade could go." She flinched, just slightly. "Eric, come on." It was a dig, all right. A low blow. "We were fighting. We weren't fighting." I cut in. "You were performing. You needed to feel like you had power. So you went for the one thing you thought I wouldn't defend." She looked down at the folder, her voice quieter. "So what now? You freeze me out of everything?" "Not everything," I said. "Just what isn't yours." Her eyes snapped back to me. "That's financial abuse." "No," I said calmly. "It's preparation and protection." She took a shaky breath, folded her arms. "You're overreacting. You're seriously willing to burn this marriage over one comment?" "That's the thing," I said. "It wasn't just one comment." Her silence was answer enough. I leaned in slightly, voice lower. "Madeline, if I find out that there was more behind that sentence, if there's anything real connecting you to Daniel again, or anyone else for that matter, you will lose everything. This prenup doesn't just protect me from asset loss. It voids any claim you have on what we built together if infidelity is proven." Her eyes widened. Panic bloomed across her face like a slow poison. "You're bluffing," she said. "You don't have proof of anything." "Not yet," I said. "But I'm very good at collecting things. Details, timelines, phone records, pictures." She swallowed hard. I stepped around the island and placed the folder gently back in the drawer. "You walked into this marriage with designer heels and a carry-on suitcase," I said evenly. "I carried everything else. And now, I'll be keeping it." She said nothing. Not right away. The power had drained from her face, her voice, her posture. She looked like someone who had just realized the house she thought she owned was actually a rental. An eviction was coming fast. "You said you loved me once," she murmured. "I did," I said. "And I still might have. But you insulted my loyalty. So now all that's left is business." I walked out of the kitchen and left her standing there, cards still on the counter, folders still echoing in her mind. And in that quiet, I knew the shift had begun. She wasn't the storm anymore. I was. The next morning, I met Patrick at a quiet cafe off Lake Street, the kind of place that served artisan espresso with foam so perfect it looked photoshopped. We sat near the window, 2 laptops open. One mission. Patrick took a sip of his drink and nodded at my screen. "Let's start with her tagged photos." I scrolled through her feed, years of carefully curated perfection flashing by. Charity events, Weekend brunches, staged wine glasses with string lights in the background. Madeline had always known how to make a moment look more glamorous than it felt. But behind all the flattering angles and filters, I was looking for the cracks. I'm telling you, I muttered. If she slipped up, it'll be here. Patrick smirked. People always slip up online. It's where their vanity meets their carelessness. I clicked into a photo from 6 weeks ago. Madeline standing on the rooftop bar at the Royce. Blue dress, side profile, hair caught mid-motion. Captioned, needed this night, dizzy wine glass. Patrick leaned over. Zoom in. Who took that picture? I looked closer. In the reflection of the glass behind her, barely visible, the outline of someone holding a phone. A man. Dark shirt. Tall. That's not me, I said. No kidding, Patrick muttered. Let's find out who it is. We opened the list of tagged users. A name popped up at DanSawyer86. I froze. Daniel, I said. That's her ex. Patrick clicked through. Let's see what our charming dinner expert's been up to. Daniel's profile wasn't private. A grave mistake. Recent post. A low-lit photo of steak, wine, and 2 glasses. Caption. Same table. Better company this time. Date. Same night as Madeline's rooftop shot. Patrick let out a low whistle. That's what we call circumstantial, but promising. I clicked into the comments. Buried near the bottom, Madeline's account. Funny how the view never changes winking face. Patrick's fingers were already flying across his keyboard. That emoji combo could be gold in court. Flirtation plus timing equals motive. I want every interaction between them documented, I said. He nodded. Already archiving. We kept going. Her stories. We'd saved them the week before, thanks to an app Patrick recommended. In one clip, she was laughing at something off-screen. Her voice was soft, a little drunk. Stop, Patrick said. Play that again. I did. He turned the volume up and isolated the background audio. A male voice. Not mine. You always order that, the voice said, laughing. I didn't recognize it for sure, but it didn't matter. The tone, the comfort, the implication was there. Patrick paused the video. How long do you think she's been seeing him again? I shook my head. No idea, but long enough to stop hiding it. He tapped his laptop. I've got screen records of all this saved. Metadata intact. She can delete anything she wants now, but we've already frozen time. I leaned back in my chair, hands folded. She said I was cold, that I checked out. Patrick gave a dry laugh. Funny how the moment you get smart, they start rewriting history. We dug deeper. Photo tags, mutual follows, comment likes. I was amazed at how fast a pattern emerged, a breadcrumb trail of digital arrogance. 3 weeks ago, Madeline commented a fire emoji on Daniel's gym mirror selfie. 2 weeks ago, she liked a post of him at the beach, captioned could get used to this view. 6 days ago, Daniel replied to her with, some things are better the second time. Patrick flagged each one, dropping them into a growing folder named Exhibit A, Reconnection. You think she's dumb enough to think this stuff won't matter? I asked. She doesn't think at all, Patrick replied. She posts. And in court, that's enough. A waitress came by to refill our coffee. I barely noticed. I was staring at a picture Madeline posted last month. A wine glass, a hand, a caption, old habits, new rules. The hand wasn't mine. I looked at Patrick. How soon can we bring this to the table? He shrugged. Give me 2 more days. Let her dig her own digital grave a little deeper. And just like that, we went back to scrolling. 2 men in suits, sipping espresso and digging through a curated life, one double tap at a time. It started that evening. I was back home, heating up leftovers and watching the loading bar crawl across my laptop screen as Patrick's compiled archive finished syncing to the encrypted drive. And then, a ping. Patrick, check her Instagram. Now. I opened the app and tapped into her profile. Gone. Well, not entirely. Just gutted. Over half her photos vanished. Captions rewritten. Comments scrubbed. The flirty emojis? Replaced with generic words like fun night and love this place. A once carefully curated illusion of confidence was collapsing right in front of me, and fast. Another ping. Patrick, she's panicking. Digital damage control. Texts too. Saw 3 unsent replies to Daniel's posts in under 5 minutes. I replied, she knows we're close. His response came with a smug little satisfaction I could almost hear. Doesn't matter. We already archived everything. I leaned back in my chair, watching as Madeline locked her account down completely, from public to private in real time. Her follower count dipped. Her bio changed. Even her profile picture was switched to some vague stock-style flower, as if pretending she was a new person could erase the tracks she'd already left behind. But it was far too late. See, Madeline never understood how quiet men like me fought. She thought strategy was manipulation. That composure was weakness. That silence meant surrender. She never once considered that the man who handled the bills, tracked the statements, and managed the Wi-Fi password might also know how to build an airtight legal strategy. I stared at her ghosted profile, the screen now displaying, "This account is private." And I smiled. Across town, Patrick was already organizing the files by relevance: photos, metadata, captions, timestamps, and context, all bundled up, ready to be presented in court like a digital autopsy report. Another message from him popped up. "You want me to send her a little note? Let her know it's too late?" I typed back, "No. Let her sweat. Let her feel the silence for once. Let her refresh the page, hoping something's changed. Let her check her messages and find none." Because this time, it wouldn't be her smirking over a glass of wine. This time, she was playing defense, and she didn't even know the rules. And that was the beginning of her unraveling. While we're here, please press like and let me know you're with me. It was a Thursday, cold, dry, uneventful, until I turned the corner onto our street and saw a moving trailer parked in my driveway like it had every right to be there. My first thought wasn't even panic. It was disbelief. A numb kind of really? That made me slow the car to a crawl. That trailer was big, rented for a full-day haul, back door open, and standing beside it, barking orders at two movers in gray polos, was Madeline. She wore sunglasses, dramatic, oversized ones, even though the sky was overcast. Her arms flailed as she pointed at furniture like a real estate tycoon ordering a purge. Her voice cut through the air. "That's mine. The coffee table, too. Anything we picked out together is joint property. Take it all." I parked, got out slowly, and didn't say a word. Not yet. The movers hesitated when they saw me. I recognized one of them from a local company. College kid, barely 20. He gave me a nod that said he didn't want trouble, just a paycheck. Madeline spun around when she heard my footsteps crunching on the driveway. "Well," she said, lifting her chin. "Took you long enough." "What is this?" I asked, voice low and steady. "A collection," she replied, "of everything I'm legally entitled to." I walked past her, up the steps to the front door. The lock had been scratched, not broken, but tampered with. "You try to change the locks?" I asked without looking back. She scoffed. "You changed the bank accounts. Don't start preaching fairness now." I turned. "You show up with a trailer and try to gut the house while I'm at work. That's not fairness. That's theft." Her voice rose. "It's not theft if my name's on it too, Eric." A few curtains on nearby houses shifted. I could feel the neighbors peeking. Springbrook was the kind of place where quiet streets meant loud gossip. And Madeline, she wasn't lowering her voice for anyone. "You don't get to play victim here," she snapped, pointing a finger at me. "You iced me out. You stole money. You're the one who started this." I stepped closer, speaking so only she could hear me. "You started it the moment you decided humiliation made for good dinner conversation." She glared. "Don't act like you're some wounded saint. You've been waiting to punish me. Well, guess what? You don't control everything." She turned to the movers, waving aggressively. "Go on, keep loading." One of the guys looked at me helplessly. "Sir," she said, "it's joint property. We don't want to get in the middle." I nodded. "That's fair. So let's clarify something." I walked into the house, grabbed the file I now kept on the hallway table, the one with a copy of our prenup and a breakdown of assets, marked by colored tabs. I brought it outside and opened it right there on the porch like a lawyer at trial. "This couch," I pointed, "bought it with funds from my separate account. This dining set, gifted by my parents. These paintings, mine before the marriage." Madeline looked at the pages, and for a moment, her mouth opened, then closed again. "You're making this public," she said quietly, suddenly aware of the eyes on us. "No," I said. "You did that when you brought a trailer and a tantrum to my front lawn." Her voice cracked, but she covered it with anger. "You're not allowed to change the locks. And you're not allowed to lie about what belongs to you." I shot back. She dropped her sunglasses just enough for me to see her eyes. Wide, glossy, frantic. "You think you're winning," she hissed. I didn't reply. I just looked at the movers and said calmly, "If anything leaves this property without verified receipts, you'll be participating in a civil theft case. Your choice." The older mover cleared his throat. "We'll wait in the truck." They packed up quickly, sliding the trailer door shut with a loud bang. Madeline stood frozen in place, her fists clenched at her sides. "You humiliated me," she whispered. I met her eyes. "No, I just stopped letting you do it to me." And with that, I walked back inside, closed the door behind me, and left her standing on the lawn, a queen without her court. I stood just inside the front door, hand resting on the frame, listening to the silence that followed the slammed trailer. It wasn't peaceful. It was the silence right before something breaks. Madeline was still on the lawn, still seething, still clinging to whatever thread of control she thought she had left. I opened the door again, leaned out, and called down calmly, "You want to move out?" I said, "Fine. Let me help you." Her head snapped up. "What?" I didn't answer. I just turned, climbed the stairs without urgency, and headed straight to the bedroom closet. The movers were still lingering near the trailer, confused but curious. I slid open the closet door. Half of it, hers, was still packed with expensive coats, color-coded dresses, high-end handbags, and labeled boxes. She used to joke about how she could never travel light. Good. I grabbed a coat first, then a pair of boots, then a duffel she hadn't used since Palm Springs. And one by one, I tossed them out the window. It wasn't angry. It wasn't rushed. It was deliberate. A handbag tumbled onto the lawn, landing with a soft thud. A blouse floated for a second like a paper kite before crumpling against the hedge. From outside, I heard one of the movers laugh, short, uncomfortable. Madeline shrieked, "Eric, what the hell are you doing?" "Helping," I said flatly, leaning out just long enough to make eye contact. "You wanted to take your things. I'm just speeding up the process." Her face twisted, caught between fury and disbelief. "Are you out of your mind? That's a Gucci coat." I held up the next item, a pair of red heels. "Then you should probably catch this one." She didn't. They hit the grass. Another dress followed, then a suitcase, then another. She circled the lawn, trying to grab things midair, yelling at the movers to do something. But they just stood there, arms crossed, clearly deciding their hourly rate didn't cover this level of drama. I didn't smile. Not really. But something in me finally felt, still, detached. Like I was watching a movie where I knew the ending, and all the tension had already been drained from the frame. She shouted again, something about the neighbors, about calling the police, about me being unstable. I didn't answer. I just dropped the last bag, her gym tote, and shut the window with a soft click. Then I stood in the quiet of the bedroom, alone, surrounded by the echo of a woman who had thought she'd never be shown the door unless she opened it herself. And down below, the lawn was covered in fabric, designer leather, and pieces of a life that no longer belonged here. It looked like exactly what it was. A purge. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not physically. The thermostat probably said 72, but in spirit. Everything felt stiff. Polished wood. Low murmurs. That artificial stillness before a verdict slices through someone's carefully built lie. Madeline sat at the opposite table, dressed for sympathy. Hair straightened to perfection. Pearl earrings. A soft blue blouse that made her look fragile, maybe even innocent, if you didn't know better. Her attorney, a slick-talking man named Lorne Withers, stood before the judge and launched into his performance. "Your Honor," he began with affected concern, "my client has endured months of emotional abandonment, weaponized silence, and financial restriction. What we are seeing here is not a fair separation between two consenting adults, but a calculated campaign to destabilize and control her." I didn't move. She was shut out of accounts, denied access to funds, humiliated in public. The financial cruelty alone. Patrick, seated beside me, leaned forward and calmly interrupted. "Your Honor, we'd like to submit into evidence a series of digital communications, time-stamped and archived prior to deletion by the defendant." The judge, a stern woman in her late 50s with zero tolerance for dramatics, raised an eyebrow. "Proceed." Patrick stood, handed over the neatly tabbed folder. Exhibit A through F, screenshots of direct messages between Mrs. Renshaw and her former partner Daniel Sawyer, including captions, emojis, and location data that placed them at multiple private dinners, while she was still residing in the plaintiff's home. Madeline shifted. Patrick continued. Exhibit G contains metadata from her deleted Instagram posts, including references to same table, better company, and several comments implying an ongoing romantic connection. These were archived before her account was locked. Lorne Withers opened his mouth, then closed it again. The judge flipped through the file, page after page, evidence after evidence. I didn't need to say a word. Madeline's online trail did all the talking. And Exhibit H, Patrick added smoothly, includes a breakdown of all financial transfers from our client's private account into a trust, fully legal, per the prenuptial agreement signed and notarized 11 years ago, which my client brought into this marriage at the defendant's insistence. The judge set the file down. Her eyes moved to Madeline, who sat still as stone. Mrs. Renshaw, she said, voice clipped. Do you dispute the authenticity of these messages? Madeline's voice was barely above a whisper. They were just conversations. Were you or were you not romantically involved with Mr. Sawyer during your marriage? Her throat worked hard to swallow. It wasn't serious. The judge nodded once. That wasn't the question. Silence. Patrick leaned back, hands folded neatly. Lorne Withers stood, but there was nothing left in his eyes but resignation. Your Honor, he muttered, clearing his throat. I'd like to request a recess to confer with my client. No need, she interrupted sharply. This court finds Mrs. Renshaw in breach of the prenuptial agreement on grounds of infidelity and deception. Any claim to marital property is therefore forfeited. Additionally, the court recognizes the legality of Mr. Renshaw's financial transfers. Madeline's breath hitched. She turned toward Lorne, who simply gathered his papers, nodded to the clerk, and walked out. Just like that, she was left alone at her table, trembling. Her carefully rehearsed persona crumbled in front of everyone, her hands shaking as she reached for a glass of water that wasn't there. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just watched. Not with vengeance. Not with joy. Just with the quiet weight of someone who saw the truth come to light. Not in a scream, but in a slow unraveling. As the judge banged the gavel and the courtroom emptied, Madeline turned toward me. Her eyes were red, makeup smudged, breath shallow. She tried to speak, maybe an apology, maybe one last plea. But I stood, adjusted my coat, and walked past her without a word. Let her sit in the silence she once weaponized. Let her feel what it's like when the story no longer bends in her favor. And outside that courthouse, the air felt cleaner than it had in months. It was almost midnight when I heard the knock. Not the sharp kind. The soft, rehearsed kind. Like she hoped I'd open the door, already softened by the sound of it. I didn't rush. I took a breath, set down my drink, and walked to the front hall. When I opened the door, she was there, Madeline, standing in the same heels she used to wear when she wanted something. Tight black dress, lipstick darker than usual, eyes watery, but focused. The performance was still on. She didn't wait for an invitation, just stepped inside like she still had the right. I figured you'd still be awake, she said, her voice low, almost sweet. I closed the door behind her, but stayed by it. You figured wrong. She looked around the house. Empty shelves where her books once sat. Blank spaces on the wall where her taste had dominated. The silence was no longer hers. Madeline turned back to me, lips parting with a practiced sigh. Eric, we don't have to be enemies. I raised an eyebrow. You sure treated me like one. She walked closer. Slow. Deliberate. That scent she wore in the early years followed her like a memory. Everything just got out of control, she said, placing a hand lightly on my chest. We don't have to lose everything. I mean, I still know what you like. I looked down at her hand, then met her eyes. Do you? I said quietly. Because what I like now is honesty. She leaned up on her toes slightly, her voice a breath against my jaw. I can still give you something no one else can. I let the moment stretch. Let her believe she had me. Then I stepped back. Sorry, I said, with a small smirk. I already slept with someone better than you. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even true. But it hit her like glass to the face. Her whole body recoiled. The softness vanished. Her voice snapped. You're disgusting. No, I said. Just done. She blinked fast, trying to recover. You think this makes you powerful? Walking away from everything we built? I opened the door and looked her square in the eye. No, Madeline. I think it makes me free. She stared at me, shaking, jaw tight. Then she left, stormed out into the night, like she had somewhere else to go. But I knew better. She had no plan now, and I had no reason to care. The next evening, I sat across from Patrick at a quiet bar just off Monroe. The kind with leather booths, soft jazz playing from some hidden speaker, and bartenders who didn't rush a pour. He slid a glass of whiskey toward me, the good kind, dark, warm, earned. To clean exits, he said. I lifted mine. To sharp contracts. We clinked, and I took a long sip. It burned in a good way. Like clarity. Patrick leaned back, watching me over the rim of his glass. You know, he said, you almost didn't sign that prenup. I remember. 11 years ago. You sat on my office couch for 2 hours talking about how love makes the paperwork feel cold. I smiled faintly. Yeah. I said something stupid like, we'll never need it. He snorted. You said, and I quote, Madeline isn't like that. I shook my head slowly. Close call. Patrick nodded, finishing his drink. Close call? Man, that prenup saved your house, your accounts, your retirement, and let's be honest, your peace. I didn't disagree. I just stared into the amber in my glass and let the quiet settle. After a moment, I said, You think she ever loved me? Patrick tilted his head. Maybe, in her own way. But sometimes people don't know how to love without power. And once you stop letting them hold it over you, they panic. I let that sit, then smiled. Next time, I'm signing first. He raised his empty glass. Next time, date later. We both laughed. And for the first time in a long while, it felt real. No tension, no strategy, just the simple truth that sometimes surviving something teaches you more than all the plans in the world. And that silence, the kind you earn, is better than any victory. And that was the end of my story. Madeline showed up to my door one last time, trying to pull us back into something she'd already torn apart. But what stuck with me more was how her lawyer walked out of that courtroom without even defending her. Did he leave because he knew she was wrong, or because some battles aren't worth fighting? Let me know in the comments if you think he did the right thing. And if this story hit you somewhere real, like, comment, and subscribe for more.